focus on what matters.
Hello, and welcome to our virtual event titled Driving Towards an Autonomous Future. I'm Joanne Muller, transportation correspondent at Axios, and I'm coming to you from Detroit, Michigan. I want to thank Aurora for making this conversation possible on the future of autonomous vehicles in shaping the next century of transportation, labor, and even the economy. Welcome to our audiences on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course, Axios.com. Join the conversation today on Twitter with @Axios and #Axios Events. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll unpack how the AV industry is preparing for commercial deployment with trucks, tractors, and cars, and expanding accessibility and impacting the critical movement of goods. Our first guest is the representative from Washington's 5th Congressional District, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. Hello.
Good afternoon, Joanne. It's great to be with you.
Well, thanks for joining us on this important conversation. You know, I cover autonomous vehicles for Axios, and I know this much, that the technology is almost ready. And my question is, are the regulators ready? Is government ready?
Not yet. And I believe that it's a missed opportunity right now as Congress is debating infrastructure packages, as this technology is ready. I believe in order for America to lead and win this race around autonomous vehicles, which is certainly a priority for me, that we should be moving right now to provide that national framework for autonomous vehicles. And the infrastructure package that is before Congress right now would have been the perfect opportunity to provide the certainty as well as the flexibility to the developers to advance this transformative, life-saving technology for the American people. So I believe that this is a missed opportunity. I've been beating the drum, both in committee and on the floor as we work through this infrastructure package. But it is disappointing right now that some are walking away at the very time that we should be leading.
Well, maybe you can help us understand that there has been autonomous vehicle legislation being discussed since 2017. Why has it not passed yet? What do you see as the problem areas?
Well, I think you highlight an important bill that did pass in 2017, creating that national framework for autonomous vehicles. It passed the House. Well, it passed the Energy and Commerce Committee with a 54-0 vote. So bipartisan Republicans and Democrats that came together in 2017. It passed the House with a voice vote. And then unfortunately, it was really the trial bar that got involved. And from my perspective, they keep changing the goalpost as far as the opportunity to sue and what they're demanding be a part of this legislation. And I would really like to see us work something out, but they have made it extremely difficult right now to work on some legislation.
What are the chances that it could be revived, separate from the large infrastructure bill that's been discussed lately? But just in general, what are the chances that we can move forward on this at this point?
Well, it's the political will to move forward, and I'm going to keep talking about the importance of America leadership when it comes to autonomous vehicles. America has led in so many other fields when it comes to innovation. You think about the transformation that's going to take place. We are going to move to driverless cars. It is our future. And it may be as big as when we move from horse and buggy to the first, Model T Ford back when, but this is going to be transformative and America needs to be leading. Now, for the naysayers, they can always come up with other issues that need to be considered. It's innovative. It's going to be new. It's going to be, there's going to be changes. And unfortunately, right now, the trial bar has been putting up a lot of obstacles when it comes to moving this new innovation. But we risk China and other countries taking the lead. We know that China right now is moving forward. They want to get to a place where they control not just the technology, but also the supply chains related to driverless cars and autonomous vehicles. That's the risk, and that's the urgency in Congress passing some kind of a national framework. And there's a lot of support for autonomous vehicles. It is new, it's going to be transformative. But Joanna, I might just share, I have a son with disabilities, and he's 14 years old right now. And the opportunity for him to be able to get around town, mobility that would open up to him if there were driverless cars available, is a life changer. I have a father, a senior. He's in his 80s, and he drove me to the airport not too long ago, and he said, I probably shouldn't be driving anymore, Cathy. So you think about seniors, you think about those with disabilities, you think about the more efficient movement of people and goods because of driverless cars and vehicles. It is going to have a positive impact. It's going to have a positive impact on carbon emissions. All the work that's being done right now to bring down carbon emissions, it would be a more efficient movement of people and goods. And I'm frustrated right now that because the trial bar keeps raising concerns that Congress has backed away from actually moving forward with a national framework.
Do you have an idea of how these issues of liability could be handled in a way that would satisfy everyone? Because that is a question that people ask me. Who's liable if there's an accident?
Well, that's where, we need to get back to the table. And I would underscore that a couple of Congresses ago, back in 2017, we were able to reach an agreement, bipartisan agreement, on legislation that passed the committee, Republicans and Democrats, 54-0, and then passed the House with a voice vote. So we could. I'm ready. Let's get to the table. But right now, there seems to be just the goalposts keep moving such that we are not able to sit down and have those discussions. And we need the leaders in Congress to make this a priority.
I'd like to ask you also about assisted driving technology. Some automakers, rather than shoot for the moon to go fully driverless, have been sort of layering automated features onto vehicles as they go. And the cars are becoming much more capable to handle certain driving conditions. But that part of it is not clear whether there would be regulations around that. What's your feeling on assisted driving as it becomes more common? Should we have regulations?
Well, I think NHTSA needs to be doing more in this space, and every day that goes by, it's a missed opportunity. There needs to be more rules around how we move and how we continue to take these steps, but keep our roads safe. So I would encourage NHTSA to keep building on the progress that has been made, but we need them to keep taking action. You think about some of the driver-assisted technology that is now available. You think about other obstacles that manufacturers are facing when it comes to deploying or taking next steps. You have a drive. There's a law in the place right now that a driver needs to keep their hands on the steering wheel at all times. But yet, if we're going to be moving in this direction, steering wheel is not going to be needed. But they need NHTSA. And the agencies need the direction and the authority from Congress to be, taking the next steps for driver assisted and continuing to move in the direction of driverless cars, autonomous vehicles, led by innovation right here in the United States of America.
So it definitely sounds like you would like to see more active NHTSA. Do you feel that they are well enough funded? Do they have the staffing and the funding to do what's needed to begin regulating this really 100-year change in automobiles and vehicles?
As far as I know, it's not a resource issue. It's really them needing the direction from Congress. They need Congress to be directing them, and then they also need to be doing what they can from an agency level. But it all points to the importance of us getting a deal, that this Congress, in the midst of a big package on infrastructure, this is the time. This should be the Congress to strike a deal and move forward on a national framework for autonomous vehicles.
Well, Congresswoman Rodgers, I'm sorry that we're out of time. I would love to talk more about this, but it's obviously a very busy time in Washington, and we really appreciate you taking time to talk about this with us.
Thanks for having me and highlighting the issue.
And next, we have a View from the Top segment with my Axios colleague, Chief Business Officer, Fabrizio Drummond. Fabrizio?
Thank you, Joanne. I'm Fabrizio Drummond, Axios Chief Business Officer. I now have the pleasure of hosting a conversation with Chris Thompson, co-founder and CEO of Aurora. Chris, welcome to Axios.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate the chance to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Chris, Aurora has been playing an important role in the autonomous vehicle space. Tell us more about the Aurora driver product, the technology, and what makes it unique.
Yeah, thanks. So Aurora, we've been around for about 4.5 years now. We're on the mission to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. The Aurora driver is our combination of software, hardware, and data services, offboard stuff that helps the driver vehicle move safely through the world. What makes it unique, I think, first starts with the experience that our team has. So we have veterans from Waymo, from Tesla, from Uber, obviously, from Caterpillar, John Deere, and all the rest that come here to try to make this mission happen. And that's led us to be building foundational technology that will ultimately scale across all kinds of different vehicle platforms. The Aurora driver has this common core that means the same software, same hardware drives big trucks as drives passenger vehicles and sedans. And we're doing some really exciting work in our map technology that allows us to scale and maintain those maps more efficiently than we think others can. Some really exciting work with our First Light LiDAR, which is this FMCW technology that allows us to see a long distance, allows us to instantaneously measure how fast things are moving through the world, and be much more immune to noise. So we think all of that leads to an incredible product that will help transform transportation.
Excellent. Transitioning to the deployment of the technology, the industry is in an important transitional phase where we're transitioning from building the technology to begin selling the technology. Tell us, how much are we into a science development mode versus ready to see this technology be deployed at scale?
I think this is a really incredibly exciting period for the industry and for us as a company. For the last few years, Aurora has been focused on building the core technologies that will enable trucks to drive themselves and cars to drive themselves. And now we're in this period of focusing those core capabilities and delivering them with our partners out onto the road to go serve customers and do something useful in the world.
And then from a safety perspective, as I think about putting my family in a self-driving vehicle, or perhaps a company transporting goods in a self-driving truck, the big question is, how safe is it to be driving next to a self-driving vehicle on a highway?
I think this is one of the incredible opportunities for this technology, is we kind of forget the status quo. So today, something like 40,000 Americans die on our roads every year. Globally, 1.25 million people die on the world's roads. And we can do something about that, and that's what this technology enables. At Aurora, it's really at the heart of our whole approach to solving the technology, to bring this product to market. It's right there in our mission: deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. As we think about, as a person on the road around this technology, you should be thinking about the fact that it doesn't get distracted. It doesn't have a bad day and decide that, its ego is going to win, and so it's going to drive in a way that you wouldn't want to. And while we're developing this technology, we always have two operators in our vehicle. So one behind the wheel who's able to kind of safe the vehicle, and the other who's observing what it's thinking, and so can proactively engage with the driver to make sure that we keep the public safe as we're out on the road. And at Aurora, we've really thought hard about how do we minimize the amount of time we have to spend on road, and invested heavily in offline development, virtual development, and test tools. Our simulation framework is something that I think is best in class, that allows us to model the way energy moves through the world, so we can simulate our sensors and our cameras so that we can really predict how they're going to behave as we're dealing with challenging situations. And then we can procedurally generate really interesting variations on a scenario we might have experienced on the road to give us confidence that we can handle a wide variety of these situations as we move forward and get to the point where we can launch the product.
And how is Aurora collaborating with federal, state, and local officials to make safety a priority in the autonomous vehicle regulation?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the founding thoughts we had as a company was, let's do what we can do best in the world, and let's partner with the folks around us who are involved in this ecosystem. And so whether that's the vehicle manufacturers or the people who use those vehicles in commerce, or whether it's folks in government or in regulatory bodies, we think it's really important to engage. These are critical stakeholders. And so from day one, we've engaged at the federal level and the state level to help educate about what where Aurora's going, what this technology means, why it's important, what the challenges are, so that as this becomes a commercial product and out there operating at scales, people aren't surprised, and we can be thoughtful about the U.S.'s approach to regulation and engagement in the industry.
Excellent. Let's perhaps end here with your take on what's next. When can we expect to see self-driving vehicles in our neighborhoods or across, trucks across the highways in the future?
Yeah, so at Aurora, we've been, again, building this foundational technology, and now we're building a strong partner base that will help us bring this technology to market. Today, we're partnered with Toyota, the world's #1 auto manufacturer. We're partnered with FedEx, the U.S.'s largest carrier, with the most number of tractors and trailers in the market. We're partnered with PACCAR and Volvo Trucks, 2 of the top 3 truck manufacturers in the U.S. And we're partnered with Uber, the world's #1 ride-hailing platform. So all of that gives us the springboard to bring the technology to market. We're going to be bringing a trucking product to market first. We're shooting to have that launch at the end of 23. And then about a year later, relying on the fact that we have this common software and hardware for both trucks and cars, we expect to launch an initial ride-hailing product at the end of 24. And so that's when you'll start to see the Aurora Driver in market.
Excellent, Chris. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for such an insightful conversation.
Oh, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Aurora, for making this conversation possible. Joanne, back to you.
Thanks, Fabricio. Our final guest is John Deere's Chief Technology Officer, Jahmy Hindman. He's joining us today from Moline, Illinois. Hi, Jahmy.
Hi, Joanne. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. Appreciate you being with us. I think some people might be surprised that we have John Deere on a panel about autonomous vehicles. But the fact is, right, that Deere has been adding levels of automation to its tractors and farm machines for many years, I think, right? Can you briefly catch us up on your history with autonomy?
Sure. Yeah, you're exactly right. So for the better part of 2 decades, Joanne, we've been working on progressive steps of increasing automation in our vehicles in order to finally get to that end state of full autonomy in the future. So 20 years ago, we introduced satellite guidance, GNSS guidance on our machines. And so today, it might surprise some people, tractors, combines, and sprayers in our agricultural applications, for example, largely drive themselves through the field based upon that satellite guidance signal that they're receiving.
So, if we were to put this in automotive terms, it seems to me you've kind of been gotten to hands-free cruise control, and now you're going to full autonomy, I think, with your acquisition recently with Bear Flag Robotics. Tell us about that company and what capability that's adding.
Yeah, Bear Flag is a unique opportunity for us, Joanne. You're right. Our end state is full autonomy, and Bear Flag really gives us some of the skill sets, the talent, and the technology that we think we need in order to finally remove an operator from the operator station. The agricultural autonomy problem is a little different than on highway in the sense that the speeds are slower, so it makes the problem a little more tractable. Our environment is a little more consistent, so that makes the problem a little more tractable for the technology. But to offset that, we have to do a job with the tractor, with the combine, or with the sprayer. And so autonomy for us is not just driving the vehicle from point A to point B and doing that safely with the perception system, but we also have to monitor the job that the machine is doing at the same time and make sure that that job is fully automated.
Well, I think the big question is what's driving this, right? Why is all this so important? What's happening on farms that you need robots to do the work?
That's a great question. The reality is the global population continues to grow, right? We're at 7.8 or 9 billion people today. We'll be at close to 10 billion people by 2050. And so farmers fundamentally face the challenge of having to produce more food, more fuel for that growing population on no more arable land and with no more resources. And so one of those resources is labor, right? And for the whole history of farming, the labor and the machine have been tightly connected, right? You have to have one in order to make the other function. And really autonomy presents us the opportunity to sort of decouple labor from the machine usage, from actually getting the work done within the farm, and to reduce their dependency upon what is becoming an increasingly scarce resource, the labor that they need in order to perform the work that they do.
So in your view, it's not putting farm workers out of work. There just simply aren't enough farm workers?
That's exactly right. We face that issue today sort of universally across agriculture globally. A good piece of evidence in that regard, I think, Joanne, is if you looked at the latest U.S. Census data that was just released, there was roughly a 4 to 5% movement of people from rural environments to urban environments that's happened since the previous census. That pattern, while that's U.S. data, that pattern is fairly consistent across the globe. And so there's just less labor in the workforce from a rural location perspective to do the labor that needs to be done on the farm. And that's why automation, autonomy is so key.
I've heard farming described as a big outdoor factory, which I thought was such an interesting way to put it. And, it needs to be precise. It needs to be efficient. It needs to be productive. Things have to happen at certain times, right? How does automation help you do that? Or autonomy either?
That's a great question. We'll take planting maybe as an example, Joanne. At the spring of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, a farmer has roughly 10 days to get their crops completely planted without penalizing themselves from a productivity perspective. So if they plant earlier than that, they may not yield as much. If they plant later than that, they may not yield as much. And so that timing window is really, really important. They need to get all of their crops in that roughly 10-day period of time. And so you can think how autonomy and automation actually help with that problem when you're no longer dependent upon the labor to get that work done. You can do it when you need to do it, number one. And number two, you can do it at a quality level that's really, really repeatable and really, really high because you've automated it. So I think that's one example of the time sensitivity and the benefit that automation and finally autonomy really brings to agriculture.
I would guess that farmers don't really care about whiz-bang technology for the sake of technology. They're trying to get a job done, as you said, right? Yep. Tell me how, what kinds of lessons you can get or things you can borrow, technologies you can borrow from autonomous vehicles, for instance, that help on the farm.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised. The sensing platforms that we're interested in are fairly similar to the sensing platforms and sensor modalities that on-highway is interested in. Things like stereo cameras, things like LiDARs and radars, ultrasonics, the GPUs to process the information. We share a remarkable amount in common with the perception problem that's encountered in on-highway. We just have a slightly different problem to solve.
So where are you applying autonomous technology today? What problems are you working on? And then let's talk about what comes next.
Yeah, great question. We are continuing the march of increasing automation. Like I said before, we really have to make sure that we can not only make the vehicle autonomous, but we need to make sure that the job that's being done by the vehicle needs to be able to be executed in a highly automated and autonomous way. So we're working really hard to make sure that job can be automated, that we can understand the quality of the job that's done at the end of the day, because no farmer is willing to sort of give up the steering wheel and the cab of the tractor and assume that the operation is going to be done in a way that they've become accustomed to expect without proof of that, right? So there's a lot of work that we do to make sure that we can execute that job to the level that they expected and provide them confidence that it's being done. An example of that would be in seeding, Joanne. So seeding is probably the most important operation on the farm. If you don't plant things correctly, then everything else, sort of comes from that, right? And so they want to make sure that they're planting in a way that's very consistent and consistent with how they've done it in the past, but also consistent to a quality level that they've come to expect. So as we think about automating that function in the future, we have to be able to not only automate the function, but provide the feedback to the operator, to the farmer, that we've done it to the extent that they've come to expect.
I'm curious. I don't really know whether autonomy on the farm is subjected to the same sort of safety standards and regulatory rules that you would expect for motor vehicles. Is there a separate set of standards or not really?
There are, and we're in the midst, as an on-highway, of working through what are the right standards to develop as an industry to give us a framework as an industry to design these highly autonomous systems too. And there's I think a great opportunity at the moment to work through that, given the technology that we've got available and the limitations of that technology, and a recognition of the differences that we really have in agriculture relative to on-highway driven, like I said before, by much lower speeds, obviously, and a very different environment that we're operating in.
So as we wrap up here, take us into the future, if you would. Tell us what life is like for a farmer 5-10 years from now. Are they running everything off their smartphone or where they're at some remote location?
Yeah, Joanne, I think that's entirely possible. I would tell you that farmers today largely run a lot of their operation off of their smartphone, believe it or not. These machines are all connected. Right, they're all communicating with the cloud and serving information to a grower, and they're making decisions on it day by day. I would tell you that the fully autonomous farm is not probably 5 to 10 years out, but much closer than that. And I'm excited for that. I think the problem in agriculture is more tractable, as I mentioned before, than the on-highway problem. And I think, frankly, the benefits that accrue to farmers with autonomy are going to drive the technology to be adopted at a significantly faster speed than we see in other industries.
Well, that's really fascinating. Jahmy Hindman, thank you so much for joining Axios today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Joanne. And I hope you join us at CES and we can talk about this subject even more.
I look forward to it. Thanks. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon for another virtual conversation that has made everyone smarter, faster. And thank you to our sponsor, Aurora, for making this event possible. For more news on the future of AVs and the future of the auto industry, sign up for our What's Next newsletter at axios.com/newsletters or on the Axios app. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you soon on axios.com.